This case takes place in the United States of America in the year 2020. In the quiet corner of our minds, we sometimes entertain dark thoughts about those in power over us. Usually, these thoughts pass without any consequence, but for one person and many others, the line between thought and action was crossed. This case reveals just how thin the line between imagination and reality can be, especially if we feel like we are backed into a corner. Tyrese Devon Haspil was born on the 21st of January 1999 and grew up in Brooklyn, New York. As a child, Tyrese spent some time living with his mother, but there is limited information about any siblings or his father's role in his early life. His mother struggled with poor mental health, making Tyrese's early years quite challenging. She had schizophrenia and was known to beat Tyrese and then leave him in his room for hours. Eventually, she was sectioned into a mental health institution, leaving him in the care of his maternal grandmother. The difficulties in his youth didn't stop there. His grandmother tragically died at a pivotal moment in his life. Tyrese was only 12 years old and had only just started his secondary education. Following his grandmother's passing, his Aunt Marjorie Sign stepped up and took care of him. But by this point, Tyrese had adopted some poor behavioral traits. He was occasionally troublesome, causing conflicts and staying out beyond the accepted time. This might seem like a minor issue, but the company he kept wasn't always the best. Tyrese's Aunt Marjorie mentioned in an interview that he could be very disrespectful, emotionless, and he behaved nonchalantly, doing basically anything that he wanted to do. Tyrese was incredibly academic. He entered a national web designing competition and was awarded first place. It attracted the attention of a tech entrepreneur and the CEO of GoCarda. The CEO's name was Fahim. GoCarda was a ride and hail app for motorcycle taxi services used in Nigeria, a little bit like Uber. Fahim offered Tyrese a job as his personal assistant at the age of just 16. This was a job that he worked throughout his high school years and after. Despite him being a rising star in the tech scene, Tyrese's behavior was still troublesome. His behavior impacted Marjorie significantly. As a result, she kicked him out of the house after he finished his studies. Marjorie would later say, "I just couldn't deal with it anymore." When he was 17, he entered child services and was fostered by a separate family. During this time, he became even more insolent. Tyrese's past trauma shaped him, plunging him into a cycle of malcontent that would be worsened when he learned of his biological father's death a year later at the age of 18. In 2017, Tyrese enrolled at Hofstra University for further education. However, he didn't last long. Throughout his life, he always lived close to the breadline and without much support. And although he had a job with Fahim, he struggled with expensive student loans and balancing his time between work and study. Eventually, he decided he couldn't continue with his studies any longer, and he left university after his freshman year. This was when he doubled down on his role at GoCarda, but Tyrese still had his baggage, was still inherently disrespectful, and with nothing to lose, he took advantage of his position at GoCarda. This eventually led to a conflict between him and Fahim. And now we shall delve into Fahim's background. When Fahim was a young child, his parents found work in the United States, eventually settling in New York. This was where he spent most of his early years with his two sisters. From a young age, he demonstrated a remarkable talent for technology, often creating simple web applications for his family, some for fun and some with practical uses. While still in high school, Fahim launched a social networking site for teenagers called teenhangout.com, a website similar to MSN Messenger, if anyone remembers that. But at its peak, Fahim's site generated around $200,000 a year, but eventually it succumbed to competition. During this time, he also acquired the domain name prankdial.com, inspired by his love for pranks. After graduating from high school in 2005, he enrolled for a degree in computer information systems. However, Fahim graduated in the year 2009 during the post-dot-com crash era and faced a tough job market due to economic recession. He struggled to find a job, so he revisited his earlier idea, prankdial.com. The website's unexpected success brought him in $10 million. Fahim wasn't just a tech geek with a keen entrepreneurial spirit, he was also very popular, witty, and fun. His friends described him as optimistic and always supportive, and this was the opinion of many others who knew him. With substantial capital from prankdial.com and other ventures, Fahim turned his attention to projects with significant societal value. As in 2015, he recognized an opportunity in his parents' native country of Bangladesh. With a business partner, he co-founded Pathao, the country's largest ride-sharing taxi-like company, valued at over $100 million. This then led to him creating the company Gokada in Nigeria in 2018. However, the Nigerian government banned motorcycle taxi services in 2020, impacting Gokada immensely. His combined net worth was a total of $150 million, with a personal wealth of $6 million. Friends dubbed him the Elon Musk of the developing world, highlighting his active role in innovation and investment, and he earned himself that dream big city living with a $2.2 million lavish apartment at 265 East Houston Street. So, why did he meet such a tragic end? While working as an assistant for Fahim, Tyrese began to exploit his position. Tyrese was responsible for a variety of tasks. He ran personal errands and helped Fahim organize both his work and personal schedules, among other tasks. He was also responsible for various financial tasks and consequently had access to Fahim's accounts. By September of 2018, Tyrese began embezzling funds into his personal account using a fraudulent PayPal account. He covered his tracks by providing fake statements. He had built such a trusting relationship with Fahim, only to ultimately let him down and betray him. Tyrese aspired to be a tech entrepreneur just like Fahim, but he lacked the necessary finances, skills, and morals to achieve his dream. So instead, he decided to steal his way to success, leeching off his superior. Tyrese used this money for various purposes, but at the top of his list was buying lavish gifts for his French girlfriend, Marine. By December of 2018, Tyrese escalated this thievery. He registered a bogus LLC and funneled even larger amounts of money through into his own pocket, covering these transactions by mimicking legitimate ones. 6 months later, in May of 2019, Tyrese resigned from his position as Fahim's personal assistant, but this resignation did not stop his scheme. He continued to steal from Fahim, but by January of 2020, Fahim noticed. However, he couldn't see the full extent of the embezzlement, and he believed the amount to be around $35,000. Out of kindness, Fahim contacted Tyrese. He confronted him about the theft and offered him a payment plan instead of going to the police. After all, Fahim respected Tyrese and saw him as his prodigy. But unfortunately for Fahim, this was a major blunder, because he was totally unaware of the vast scale and methods Tyrese had used to steal from him. Tyrese agreed to a payment plan over a 2-year period. He didn't want to go to prison, nor did he want his girlfriend to find out that he was a fraud and abandon him. And so he began to start paying Fahim back, but he paid Fahim back with Fahim's own money. Fahim wasn't aware of Tyrese's methods, so Tyrese kept stealing money and paid Fahim back with the same money. The sum of money that Tyrese stole from Fahim varies from source to source, but it is believed to be around $400,000. Tyrese began to become anxious. He feared that Fahim might discover the truth, which would lead to a criminal investigation, prosecution, and the loss of his girlfriend. Faced with this looming threat, Tyrese turned to even more drastic measures to ensure that he would never be caught. Tyrese chose to kill Fahim, and he became obsessed with the idea. He started tracking Fahim's every move using his social media, and in March of 2020, he followed Fahim all the way to Nigeria with a knife, with the intention of assassinating him there, although he would never get the opportunity. So, when they were back in New York City, Tyrese followed him to the Hopewell Junction twice, looking to stab him whilst he was out on a run, but again, the perfect opportunity never came. By May of 2020, Tyrese got serious and even more sinister as he started plotting and planning. Tyrese began a deep research campaign into how to assassinate someone, making it look like a professional job. He hoped that the police might determine that Fahim was killed by someone from overseas, possibly related to his business ventures. Tyrese was researching various methods of killing, including technologies and weapons like tasers that could assist him. He also researched the very best cleaning products to use afterwards to ensure his tracks were covered effectively. His second-to-last Google search was for the details of the anatomy. He looked at several areas of the body, but mostly the neck. His last search as part of his research was Fahim's East Houston Street apartment building plans, as he began to memorize the layout. On the 17th of June 2020, he took himself to a Home Depot and purchased several items that he would need for the act. He bought contractor-grade refuse bags, a floor cleaning tool, and a Makita electric saw. He then bought some clothing that would act as a disguise. He bought a black custom three-piece suit, an opaque mask, gloves, and a hood-like garment, which was described in one of two ways, like a ninja hood and like the hood of the Grim Reaper. Right across the street from where Fahim lived was another block of apartments. Tyrese contacted the real estate broker regarding a vacant apartment in the building directly across the road. Tyrese managed to get a hold of the keys for this apartment and copied them so he had access at all times and so he could spy on Fahim. He set up Nest cameras directly into Fahim's apartment so he had 24-hour surveillance. He wasn't looking to take out Fahim in a flash of violence or in a hateful reaction. He was calm, collected, and diligent. He wanted the murder to be clinical, with an optimal chance of getting away with it. While planning the diabolical assassination of Fahim, Tyrese was also plotting how to spend his stolen money. He began organizing an extravagant birthday celebration for his girlfriend, Maureen. Tyrese had booked a private yacht and rented a luxurious Airbnb in Soho for late July. In early July, he was seen purchasing a large birthday cake, birthday balloons, and all manner of luxury clothing. All the while, he was using one of Fahim's credit cards to purchase these items. With everything in place for the celebration, all that was left was to execute his plan. He just needed the perfect opportunity. On the 13th of July 2020, Tyrese noticed that Fahim had gone for a run. Seizing the opportunity, he made his way to Fahim's apartment, and at 8:30 a.m. he followed another resident into the lobby. He then slipped into the stairwell, waiting without raising any alarms. He wore his custom black three-piece suit, carried a suitcase and a duffel bag, presenting the image of a professional. But he also had an opaque mask, gloves, and a hood ready, and was armed with a taser and a knife. Looking like the angel of death, he preyed on his victim, waiting until Fahim returned from his run. At 1:40 p.m, CCTV footage shows Fahim entering his elevator in order to make his way up to his apartment. Only a second man enters swiftly. Tyrese knew that the elevator went directly into Fahim's apartment, so he had to enter as soon as Fahim pressed his floor using his key fob. When he entered, he was wearing the full costume. Fahim was suspicious of the masked man, but what could he do? He was trapped inside with him. Fahim just needed to leave the elevator as soon as possible. When the elevator doors opened, Fahim left, but Tyrese followed and unleashed the taser on his back, causing Fahim to fall to the ground completely incapacitated. As the taser stunned Fahim, the anti-felon identification discs rained over the floor like confetti. Tyrese stood over his spasming body and proceeded to stab him with his blade in the neck and torso over and over again. Fahim was killed in a matter of seconds. Tyrese did his research. He knew tasers now release anti-felon identification discs once discharged. This is so every discharge can be traced by criminal investigators. So when he finished his horrific assassination of his ex-boss, he got out his mini vacuum cleaner and cleaned the scene of the discs. At 3 p.m, Tyrese left Fahim's apartment and took an Uber to Jersey City. He chose this location because his research indicated that the Hudson River is particularly deep there, making it the perfect place to dispose of any incriminating evidence. Tyrese then went back to the flat on the 14th of July. This was his planned cleanup day. He needed to dispose of Fahim's remains. He started up the Makita electric saw and proceeded to cut Fahim's body into several parts. He decapitated Fahim, placing his head into a heavy-duty disposal bag. He dismembered all 4 of his limbs by making cuts to the softer areas of the human body. He cut at the shoulder joints and just below the knee joint. He placed his limbs into separate bags, leaving behind a well-contained pool of blood surrounding Fahim's still-clothed torso. Like in most cases, murderers cannot account for all of the scenarios they may come up against, and in this case, one thing Tyrese did not research was the battery life of the saw. When the battery ran out, he quickly headed out to a depot and purchased a replacement. All he had left to do was to finish cutting up the torso and clean the crime scene. But whilst he was out at the store looking for a battery, Fahim's cousin came to check on him, since she hadn't heard anything from him in over 24 hours, which was highly unusual. She was worried that something wasn't right. His cousin made her way up to the 7th floor, where she was met with a horrific crime scene and her worst nightmare. She found her cousin's dismembered and decapitated torso surrounded by a pool of blood. She called the police, who arrived at the scene almost immediately. When Tyrese returned to the apartment, he noticed that the authorities had arrived. After seeing the police at the apartment, Tyrese went straight back to purchasing items for his girlfriend's birthday. Nonchalant, without a care in the world, he continued his life as if everything was totally normal. He spent the following 3 days embezzling as much money as he possibly could in preparation for his girlfriend's birthday celebrations. At the same time, he was searching online for terms like dismembered body, Fahim, and murder of a tech CEO in New York. A few days later, Tyrese and Marine went on their planned luxurious Airbnb trip. However, their holiday was abruptly interrupted on the 17th of July 2020, when a task force of armed police stormed into the residence and arrested Tyrese. The police investigation had found critical evidence, including traces of the taser ID confetti, CCTV footage, and a receipt for the Home Depot purchases used in the crime. Tyrese was charged with first-degree murder. At the trial, he pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder, a charge carrying a potential sentence of 20 years to life. Instead, his legal team pursued a manslaughter defense, arguing that Tyrese was emotionally disturbed and sought a lighter sentence of 5 to 25 years. The initial trial was adjourned on the 21st of January 2021, as the defense's strategy prompted a more thorough examination of Tyrese's mental state and background. The case was subsequently taken up by the Supreme Court, where judges meticulously reviewed the evidence and arguments presented. Despite the defense's efforts to portray Tyrese as emotionally disturbed due to his challenging upbringing, the judges concluded that the murder of Fahim was premeditated and carried out with calculated intent. The evidence, including the taser ID confetti, CCTV footage, and the receipts, painted a clear picture of Tyrese's deliberate actions leading up to the murder and following the murder. On the 24th of June 2024, Tyrese was convicted of all charges, including first-degree murder, burglary, tampering with physical evidence, and the concealment of a human corpse. His sentence is scheduled for the 10th of September 2024, where he faces the possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison. Fahim's family's statement conveyed their grief, but also highlighted his positive qualities and achievements. They also described his murder as nothing short of evil, and emphasized the senseless and horrific nature of the crime. The family continues to highlight Fahim's optimistic outlook and remarkable entrepreneurial skills. Fahim had no wife or children, and left behind several businesses and a substantial fortune. His sister requested the court to appoint her the administrator of his estate. She was granted permission to manage $4 million from his estate. Fahim's family have expressed their desire to uphold the culture Fahim had established in his businesses, and to pursue the success that he had envisioned. Fahim's ambitions, which were tragically cut short, remain a testament to his remarkable legacy.